We are wanderers, neutral and in service to all of New Eden. We rescue the lost and light the way through Thera. We sail forbidden seas. Come explore with us. Signal Cartel. Can't stop the signal.
Hey there, Canucks and friends! On the 30th of March, the 4th edition of EVE Montreal will be happening! This year, we even got a VIP option. Like the previous year, we'll be having our fun at the Sugar Shack. Not only will you be able to exchange with other capsuleers from all over New Eden, but you will also get some awesome swag. And once your belly is full and that you've got your maple syrup snow taffy, we'll be entering the giveaways from CCP. And they got us some awesome merch. From Rick's Jarvik's art print to Lloyd George art prints, The Art of New Eden hardcover books, USB Rifter and more. You do not want to miss that. You want more? Get the VIP ticket to unlock the laser tag games later in the afternoon. We'll finish up the evening at a nearby pub eating and drinking again. Check out the description for more information. And see you at the Sugar Shack.
And hi there everyone and welcome to Talking in Station. Today we got two special guests. We got Matterall and Dunk Dinkle. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Yeah, it's great to be on the show. Super impressed with what you've done with it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and everything.
So, for those of us that might not know who you are, well, first of all, Dunk, could you briefly tell us who you are, who you've been?
Well, I used to be Space Important, and now I'm a ex-EVE player. So, what people probably know me for is flying with Brave Collective for many years, over a decade, and then working my way up the food chain until eventually I was the leader of Brave. And got us mainly dealt with dealing with the aftermath of the war against the goons in that was a year and a half of just pure joy.
Oh, okay. And I know that you did describe yourself as a spirit animal once in Iceland.
I think someone gave me that name that I tried to embody the kind of attitude that we wanted out of Brave pilots. In doing that, I also served on the CSM for one term, going to Iceland, and it wrapped up just before the pandemic started. So that gives you a timeline.
Okay, thank you. And Matterall.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I started out tinkering with EVE Online, got relatively addicted to it. All the complication was fascinating, and worked my way up through small corporations, then medium corporations, then larger corporations, and ended up with NC Dot for a while, and still talk with Lady Scarlet and that group. So after a while, I was I had accumulated so much knowledge that I wanted to just start talking about it beyond comms. So I started writing. I think I wrote 250 articles at EVE News 24, at thematani.com at the time. That turned into working for INN, changing it to INN actually, and then creating Talking in Stations as a editorial video show, so we could point to the map and say, here's where troops are moving and stuff like that. And then it took on a life of its own, and here you are.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So some of you might have wonder, what does winning EVE actually means? And it's kind of a meme when you read that, mostly on Reddit, because winning EVE is actually when you cease to play the game. And well, like the two guests that we got today are well versed on Eve and what it is to win Eve. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's really funny because it's a joke, but it's not a joke. And it's funny because it's true that the game can never be won. That's the first aspect of it. It's too big. It takes too many different win conditions. You can't really win EVE Online. So winning is only admitting that you can't win and you just bow out and then you get your life back. And that is the win.
so, Dunk, you got like a similar definition of winning Eve?
I never liked the term personally
Oh.
myself about winning Eve. It's the colloquialism we use when you stop playing Eve. It kind of puts a negative spin on it in my view, but I think that's the common way people talk about it. But I think most people have some kind of endpoint. A lot of people just kind of slowly ramp down, and then other people kind of like I have to draw a very clear line to when I was playing and now I'm not playing anymore.
Mm.
Yeah, the way Hilmar described it is Eve is like a river. It's kind of funny because he calls the player sediment without really saying it, but it's like a river, and at the bottom of the river is, first of all, the river is going through. Thousands and thousands of players are joining the game, and they just can't get attached to it, so they just keep going down the river. But a lot of them start to settle at the bottom in layers, layer after layer after layer. So they get just a few people every year or so, and then that sediment kind of builds. But in that sediment, people are leaving, so that's flaking off the bottom, and so that's the eco analogy of what Eve is like.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know. I always thought it was kind of a cute little, oh, he's gone to heaven kind of a thing, like he earned it back. And I used to really envy people that I didn't see anymore. It was almost like, God, he made it out. He made it out of his neighborhood.
Yeah, but the connotation to me was always the kind of if leaving is winning, then still playing the game is losing,
It does call you a
right?
loser, right?
It does call you a loser for keeping playing Eve, and that's kind of where I didn't really like that kind of
Yeah, I will
I
see.
can imagine.
duality of it.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. Um, so, what do you think makes one win Eve, actually? Maybe talk about like your personal case or some other people that you've seen.
Mm. So many thoughts on this. You can go
I
first,
think
Duncan.
there's I think there's probably like three major things that happen, right? Like one is just a personality clash. I've seen this over and over the years where an individual is clashing personally with either another individual in the game or with one of the groups in the game. And it's like a personal grudge thing or frustration or anger or something was said. And it's all about like feelings and emotion. And they're like, screw this, I'm going to leave. And the second way is people just get bored with the game. They are not finding new things to do. It's just not fun. I don't like being in these fights. I don't like mining. I don't like this. And they just kind of teeter off where they play it less and less, and they either play other games or go do something else. And then the last, I think, is more you have done a lot of things, and you reach a point where, for whatever reason, in your personal case, it's not good for you to play the game anymore, right? Either it's too stressful or it takes up too much time in your life or there's some reason you can point to a thing and say this is the reason I'm leaving the game.
Okay.
So I think it kind of breaks down in my way. That's what I've seen the most of.
I think you've described it as space janitoring for you. Is that it? That really helped to win Eve. So like all the station fueling and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I think a big part of what I did in the game before I became kind of the leader was a lot of the back end chores that it takes, the space work, if you will, of doing Eve. And I kind of liked it. I found it rewarding to do that kind of work. Um, so you do a lot of that, but a lot of people find that would be the worst part of Eve. I always found it like the most rewarding part was kind of
Oh,
working in the background doing things.
nice, nice.
Yeah, Dunk was a major facilitator for everybody else, and that was like That was not unique. There's a few people like that, but he was a leader and did that at the same time. So he would go and do a lot of manufacturing work just so other people could take those ships and go fight and have a good time. And that's well, I don't know. It's kind of neat. It's kind of selfless, right?
I don't know if it's selfless, but I think, I gave several speeches on leadership when I was attending events and stuff like that. And one of the key things about leadership is you would call it leading from the front, in which you are showing the example of the behavior you want. Excuse me. So I felt that if I was going to ask other people to go fuel antiplexes and build things and do all that kind of stuff, I should be doing some of that too. And I think it helps set an example when you see the leader or someone that's respected in the group doing the task. You feel like, well, if they can do it, I can probably do it too. So I
Did it
always felt,
work?
yeah, for the most part, it did. You
Yeah.
know, but that's just my style of leadership. Other people have a different style, but that's what worked for me. And
Yeah,
um,
my style was a hermit crab, like just gather potential, constantly gathering potential, and never doing anything with it. Uh, it's like just I was taking out of the economy, so everything else was worth more. I don't feel bad about it, but uh, you know, it's a weird greed that comes over you of like just trying to gather potential to do things because everything that you have, skill points, equipment, um, that's all potential for participation. So you can join people if the opportunity arises. But I never ended up joining anyone. Uh, it's the opposite of you.
And for you, Matterall, what would be like the condition to make Swan win Eve?
Well, obviously, look, it's this game is, a thousand, what is it, a thousand Arabic Nights or something with that book that just tells you one more story and then one more story and then there's like one more story and you never go to sleep because there's just one more story. And Eve allows you one more gameplay style. And the people who are successful at Eve will mutate their gameplay. They'll play different parts of the game because they're constantly learning. And so a natural and then you get to it. So a natural endpoint is when you've done everything, right? The second natural endpoint is when your relationships are all gone because you're building relationships the whole time. And another natural endpoint might be that you've kind of, again, done it all, but done it socially and in the game, in that you've played in a big fight. You've marked that you've been in it because you've seen them from afar and you've wanted to join them, but they were too far off. But when you finally get there, you realize you're sitting there for 12 hours and you're like, is this really worth it? So a few of those, and you're like, yeah, okay, that thrill is gone. So at a certain point, you do run out of things, and the only people who I know that survive that are people who have something else going for them, and that is they have a good Eve life balance, and so it doesn't. So they're not in it for the cycles of learning and acquiring and accomplishing or even getting fame. Like all that will run out at a certain point. You have to have something else to go longer. And
Nice.
here's a trick, and nobody knows this, but a lot of the leaders, they burned out a long time ago, right? They just have lieutenants that are the people that have good balance in their life and can stick around and hold everything together while they go off for a few months, and then come back.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a good segue to like what actually makes one endure, sorry, before actually winning or not winning, just keeping enduring, like the aspect of having lieutenants when you're in a leadership place, but there's a lot of other places. What do you guys think?
Well, I guess I jumped the gun on that one. Go ahead, Don.
I think it's more having like a personal goal you're trying to achieve. I think that if you're playing the game and always waiting for something to happen to you, it can be very easy to be kind of I keep waiting and nothing is happening. I think the people that have individual goals within the game that they want to do, whether it's make a certain amount of wealth or killing a certain amount of stuff or building things or whatever it is, if you have a personal goal that you kind of log in every day and say, hey, today I'm going to try and move a little further on my path here toward with this personal goal is, I think those people endure a lot longer than the people who are always kind of waiting for something to happen. Because the waiting part of Eve to me is really unfun.
Yeah.
I don't know. The waiting is the fishing time, right? You're sitting there on comms with friends, and it's like fishing. You're not doing anything until the opportunity arises, but you're sitting there with friends and chit chatting, sharing Cheetos. Who knows?
I think we're just built differently than I mean,
We totally.
even when I'd be chit chatting with
Well,
everyone on comms every night, I'd be doing things, right? That'd be
yeah,
the time I'd be either building or flying stuff around or handling all the HR complaints. I think,
well, that's work. That's
yeah,
not
but
fishing. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, but to me, I had to be doing something. I was never comfortable kind of sitting on comms with my feet up on the desk, just staring out into space,
That.
talking about stuff. Some people love that, but to me, that would be maddening to not be actively doing something, right? But I think
Yeah.
that's how we're built different.
Yeah, I think the people that you were helping, they were the ones that benefited from your work in that they could chill out and talk and things were being taken care of. And, they'd help out too, but they didn't have to worry about it. You had to worry about it.
Or they mainly would cause problems, and then I would have to deal with it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So to answer the question, how do you succeed in sticking around and playing the game a long time? What Dunk said, but also, I think I think I think that this is like an economy in multiple ways, but one of the ways it's an economy is it depends on what you want to spend, and it depends on what how much you save. And so I'm talking about energy here. So if you keep your spending down by just saying, you know what, I don't have big expectations. I'm just going to play this. I'm going to live in this world, and I'm not in a rush. I'm not plugging into the rat race. I'm going to just go day by day and discover new things and see new places, and sometimes just sit and watch an electrical planet or a storm planet go. Like those are magical moments. And if you have friends that you're talking to, like even late at night, it feels like that's sustainable. And if you can limit yourself, or not limit yourself, but if you can say that's the win condition, not everything else that everybody's running after, then you can go a long time with that. I think as long as you have, um, company or whatever. Once you plug into the meta, once you start chasing status, and status really will necessitate that you create status making things like events that you attended or sides that you chose or equipment that you have, status ships, etc. Once you start chasing all that stuff, eventually that will run out. I find that there's just no way it doesn't. And Eve is really good about throwing more and more and more things at you so that you have more things to chase. That's what that whole, some Eve players, have climbed Mount Everest over and over again. And they're like, what now? And so the whole thing that happened in 2015 to expand the game and to make it harder was to create Mount Olympus on Mars, which is 10 times higher than Everest. So it was just to give more runway to people who were chasing accomplishments.
Nice, nice. Thank you. So a lot about the goals. We spoke a lot about like life balance, and like I've only like been in the game for 7 years, so I'm still a noob. Uh, but there's a lot of changes that happened in the game. Any years there's a lot of changes, and we see people leaving, and they are putting like those let's say those win condition on the on those changes. What do you think about that?
Feels more like a tantrum to me than anything. Usually when someone says they took away feature X and therefore the game is broken and done and I'm leaving in a huff, it just feels like a tantrum to me.
Okay.
Pay attention to me and you're not doing it my way. Which for some people, if that's the way they want to go out, go for it. But I think I think you need to call it what it is, right?
Yeah, some Tantrum actually did their job. Like I do remember Blackout.
I think Blackout was a slightly different case where people were kind of refusing to play instead of saying like, "I quit forever. never coming back." Right. I think I was on the CSM at the time of Blackout and all that kind of stuff, and
Oh, really?
I've said this publicly, and I'll say it again today. It was one of their poor decision making, and it really stems from them not understanding the player dynamics of not just um, not just what people wanted to do in the game, but how the game worked and how fights were ran. Like there was so much they just were out of the loop about the day to day of Eve that when they put in Blackout and then stuck to their guns, they were very much on this philosophical view of how to manage the game as opposed to a practical view on how to manage the game. So I think that was more of a protest than it was an individual saying, "You took this gun away from my favorite ship, and so I'm leaving the game." Which is the kind of thing I think, which is the tantrum, where someone is a very specific thing about just their personal gameplay style that changes.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you put in ansiplexes, or how dare you change? How dare you change one of the timer systems on Citadels? Like I'm leaving. It's over. It's over a kind of very narrow thing for them. And when you had something like Blackout, it affected a significant portion of the game,
Yes.
almost all of them negatively. And so it was more of a protest, I view, than it was like people leaving the game for good.
Yeah. And speaking,
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Matterall.
I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
Like, because you're speaking about changes that affected the nullsec, and we know that this year is going to be big on nullsec changes, because that's what has been announced. So you're not there anymore, but there's gonna be like I think some Reddit posts going on fire like during the summer expansion.
Yeah,
Well, look,
the,
I
okay.
learned I learned a long time ago. There's a book you can read called "Who Moved My Cheese," and it's just humans don't like change. And anytime you change anything they're used to, even if it's a more complicated thing that you make simpler, they're going to complain about it. So there's always going to be complaints about change. The interesting thing will be is once the change has been implemented, do people find it's beneficial in the long run or not? So there are always going to be complaints at the beginning of anything. Sorry, Matterall.
No, I was just going. I wanted to run back to that question of people quitting, and there's different ways of quitting. There's swan dives into oblivion, where you just announce to the whole world, "I'm leaving. I'm taking all my marbles with them." And I think people do leave when the game changes against their career path, right? Everybody's on a path, and if you alter that path or make it 10 times longer, they're offended. So any change is going to do that because things come in and out of favor. And so if you're working to be, I don't know, some kind of marauder pilot and you're just about achieved, what you need to really do level 5 missions and then they change it, that's going to offend you because you just spent the last 8, 9 months doing that. But doing the swan dive and protesting and leaving is offensive to anybody who's playing the game because you're saying like this game sucks, not worth playing. You guys are all losers. And if you're part of this collective like bargain where we all agree that Eve is worth something, that's offensive. Why don't you leave quietly, please? Um, but the and the protests also have other um they have other reasons for happening. Sometimes it's just being a part of something. I knew somebody that was in the Congo line around Jita station shooting at it just because they're like, oh, something to do. They weren't really protesting. They just wanted to be around more people. So the protests can be used to build narratives that really those people really aren't in for the narrative. As far as Blackout goes, people did. I think CCP, what they were trying to do, came too late. They probably needed to do that earlier in the game, before basically everybody got into capitals, because that was what I think was crushed is the capital game. In Blackout, that was kind of meant for small gang. Um, that was a good idea, late in coming, but what it did, yeah, I know you disagree, Doug. What it did though is it made everybody who is risk averse, it was like practically unplayable, right? Because if you went out and got spotted at all in your capital ship, which was worth a lot of money, you just weren't going to risk it. So that's why, Goons Forum's like, just park your capitals. And I think Horde did the same thing. And, just park your capitals, don't play. And of course, their numbers started to atrophy. So they had to edit that, because they don't want their players to leave. They want the other guys' players to leave. But it was too late. Everybody had capitals, too expensive to lose. With Blackout, the capitals were at risk. But I thought interesting things happened during Blackout. I thought they pulled it too quick. I was totally on board with CCP putting on the pants and to
Well, they
use a
put their
sexist term.
pants. They put their pants on their head in that
They
game.
on their head.
Because it wasn't just capital gameplay that was affected. It was all the mining. It was all the ratting. It was all styles of gameplay that were affected by Blackout were affected. So it wasn't just the capital gameplay. It was all gameplay in basically null space, which is a significant
all Empire gameplay, but roving gangs didn't stop. And I think I saw some very interesting fights.
All gameplay in nullsec that was under the Blackout was affected. All of it. It wasn't just capitals. So,
but was it all affected badly?
If you look at the numbers, it's pretty clear. Like people stopped mining, they stopped ratting, not just in capitals, but in all kinds of ships. So I was there. I saw the internal stats.
I know, but is that bad? Is that
less
bad?
players playing the game is bad. Less players playing the game is bad. I don't care how you slice it. And that's what we saw. And that's why they eventually had to undo it. Was there were less players logging in every day to play the game, and that was a trend they couldn't deny. And so when they undid it, the players started coming back. But again,
we could have had a different Eve if they'd stuck with it, though.
We might have a dead Eve.
It might have been dead many times for different reasons. But I think if you would have made lawless space actually lawless, then you wouldn't have had so much safety in nullsec, and then you would have had an interesting game because there would have been a scary zone. But nullsec is not a scary zone. So I think the whole
again, we could go on for hours on this.
Yeah.
The fundamental thing the fundamental thing I always had about CCP's game design was their assumptions how players would react was very different than how actual players would react. And so what they have created over the last 10 years is a game design that says the smartest move, the absolute smartest move you can make in the game is to align yourself with the biggest possible entity that has the biggest power and control. And while they say they want to encourage smaller groups to form and be independent and all that stuff, every game design decision they have made for the last probably 10 years has been reinforcing the idea that align yourself with the biggest group that will protect you and recover from any loss much better, as opposed to encouraging a different style of gameplay. And they haven't wanted to listen to the CSM very much about that these changes reinforce it. And I don't keep up on e-politics these days very much, but it's basically a bipolar world between two mega coalitions, right? And even the space they set aside that was going to be for small coalitions, now that's thrown out the window, as now the major coalitions are again going after basically splitting the entire map of the game that's controllable in half. And those are game design decisions that started with Blackout, right? Where they thought Blackout was going to break up all the coalitions and all this stuff, and it didn't, right?
Well, I don't know if so game design decisions, and there have been thousands of them, may have led to that, but it's also participation of groups and how they're motivated as well. I think people are motivated by safety, and the game design decisions allow safety in numbers, and that's true. And even with structures the way they are, it became even safer.
Well, I have lost an awful lot of keep stars in my time in Eve, so I don't know that they're always that safe. So I know people like to talk about safety in nullsec, but as someone who has led an alliance through evacing through multiple regions multiple times, losing every structure we had multiple times, I don't know that I can agree that nullsec is very safe.
Oh, I think it's safe. I think again, I mean, look at the map. It's
yeah. Well, actually, on this one, I'm gonna side with Dunk because as leader of a really small alliance. Yeah, like if you don't side, it's not happening. Like we know that the big let's say PH and friends, goons and friends, yeah, like that feels really safe, safer than high sec even.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Join one of those teams and you'll have harvesting rights in nullsec where the harvesting is really good because it's supposed to be dangerous. But it turns out it's pacified.
Yeah, because now I do roams, but as soon as me and my people just appear in local, we know that we're on all intel channel, and depending on the space, we'll get dropped by black ops and other stuff. Like the idea of no local, as a
Yeah.
worm holder now, I really like it, but it's not something that is viable, in my own opinion, to the well-being of the game
Well,
as it has been designed.
yeah, and guess what exists in black holes? Like blackout, right? If you want to
And
talk about
and and in,
dangerous
and
space,
in the end, black wormholes are dominated by like basically one singular group that controls all. And if you don't follow their rules, you're evicted, right? So again,
yeah.
line
Well,
yourself with the biggest group. I mean, look, the last thing I did in Eve was take an alliance completely out of the coalition gameplay, make it very public that I was going to be independent, move to a space that wasn't really claimed too much,
yeah, but then you
carved out.
joined another coalition, didn't you?
No. That's not
All
what
right, go
happened,
ahead.
right?
All right, go ahead. You
So what
tell me.
happened is I said I'm going to be independent, and we're going to be over here. We're not going to bug you in the Imperium world. We're not going to bug you in the Winter Coalition. We're not going to bug you in PanFam. We're going to do our own thing. We're not going to try and take sides. Okay. And we did that for quite a while, right? And then what happened is one of the larger coalitions wanted us to again bend the knee and do what they wanted. And I said, no, we're going to be independent. We're not going to bend to your will, right? And Brave fought them for a year and a half, right? And in the end, fighting against two major coalitions, um, they had to move out, right, and join the other big mega coalition, right? So I tried with a group of 3,000 active players in a large storied alliance with some amount of power to carve out space and be outside of this bipolar thing, and we couldn't do it, and we're resilient, So I think again, you're the idea that the game you can go strike it on your own and be willing to be like, it just has not played out. Like I have tried. I literally took us out of a coalition to do this,
Hmm.
and that's just what happened. So it wasn't that we chose like to immediately go from coalition A to coalition B. It was just the opposite. It was the last resort is to join another coalition where we're at risk of losing everything yet again.
If
Well, it's still play. I mean, the choice was to join a coalition, though. That the game mechanics aside, you had to decide that you wanted to keep all your stuff, right? And that's why I say it's both things combined because you could get smaller. You could go to low sec. You guys were very successful in low sec, and there wasn't the
We were successful in LoSec 10 years ago.
yeah.
10 years
Well,
ago, when the gameplay was in a very different place, when there were no citadels, there were no ansiplexes, like it was a very different game 10 years ago when Brave was living in LoSec, and almost within the first year we had to move to nullsec to keep the organization going.
okay,
why'd
So,
you have
if
to move to nullsec to
if I
keep
may
the organization
interrupt,
going?
so sorry.
if I may interrupt, I'll just bring us back to the winning Eve subject. So, to go on that track, what actually would make one come back to Eve? Because a lot of people start and go off and come back a few years later. What do you think makes people come back after all those years? We see that everywhere, every week on Reddit. It's been 8 years since I haven't played. Blah 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 blah. So, what do you think makes people come back?
Hmm. Uh, Dunk.
I think it's just a couple things. I mean, I think for myself, and after I kind of quit playing, the only time I came back was when a Brave had to move, and I had a huge amount of assets that I wanted to move out of danger. I ended up moving them all the way south down to where the Imperium is. I donated a huge majority of what I had to the Alliance, so to Brave, so they could have a keep star right away. So you come back for a special event, and then I stopped playing again as soon as I was done with that. Or you just get the itch for either the talking the people, or you like there's a task you want to do. Like if there was a way to play Eve again where I was completely outside of all the, if they started Eve over from scratch again, I didn't have to be in charge and answer people's questions. I wouldn't mind going back and building some stuff in Eve. I found that stuff rewarding to me.
Nice. So that you spoke about like a social aspect. Would nostalgia play a big role in it? What do you think? Like when people like we read that on Reddit sometimes. Like I remember that we were like doing this and that, like the thrills, getting the shakes of PvP, and this kind of things. Would that be?
Well, I have a personal saying that nostalgia is a trap, right? Like you can never really
Yeah,
go
totally.
wrong. And I think that the feeling, let's say I personally had the first time I dropped carrier or force, they were called carriers at the time. Now what they would be force ox. The first time I dropped one of those in combat and was responsible for taking care of protecting an entire fleet, that feeling in that first moment was exhilarating. But I have done it so many times, I can never recapture that feeling of that moment in time. Same thing the first time you are in a Titan and you're in a Titan battle, like it is thrilling. Well, the picture behind me, here's M2, right? This is this giant battle that was fought with Titans and all this stuff, and I was there for that. And I basically would lay down on the floor for about 30 minutes at a time, and then I would hear like Doomsday Group A, wake up everybody, and I would sit up and I'd push one key, and then I'd go lay down for another half hour. So
Ash.
it goes from being like pulse pounding to, and so I think sometimes people think they can recreate that first moment, that first Force Ox drop, or that first Dread kill, or that first Doomsdaying, and it's hard to recreate those first moments over and over again.
Nice.
It goes to expectations of well, everything here is energized by risk, right? And when I think, well, first of all, I totally agree with Dunk. You can't go back. You can't. Everything is a time and a place, and that means the people were the place, who you were talking to, who was there, what you didn't know, what seemed fascinating and mysterious, and what and what doesn't anymore. So all those things are a time and a place, but also there's pressure, risk that it magnifies the stress level, and the stress is kind of where the adrenaline comes in. And when you get expensive things, it becomes riskier, and a lot, the fear of loss is a real motivator. All that stuff creates certain feelings. But when you get expensive stuff and you're in a big group and it's safe and everybody's dying, so if you die, it won't be embarrassing either. All that risk is gone. So that's why I stopped participating in big fights. It just felt like these things were orchestrated. I was basically a button pusher for somebody else's strategic mind, and they may have been having a great time because they were the ones with high risk, their reputation, but I wasn't. If I died, I just got it replaced anyway. So I think a lot of the stuff that CCP is trying to do, again with Blackout, again with like making things harder to get, is create more um, more risk and more fear of losing, because that's where some of the excitement comes from. But I wouldn't, if you're asking it, is that what brings you back, is to recreate that, the shakes and the PvP and all that sort of thing. I don't know, maybe you can get that, but you have to completely alter your expectations of what's important and what's worthwhile. And that's hard to do, but it's possible. It just depends.
Oh, yeah, nice indeed. Because like I know like the shakes in PvP that we sometimes get in Eve, it's hard to get the same kind of feeling in other games.
Well, other games are just games.
I like that.
Eve is a lifestyle. Like it
Yeah,
could get absorbed.
yeah, like creating worlds that matters more than the real world. That's the motto of CCP, right? Or something like that, paraphrasing.
Yeah, every story they tell that goes back to the roots are like, Hilmar sitting there with the baby on his lap trying to mine so that he could pay back the cruiser that he accidentally got destroyed from somebody else. But there was that what am I doing? I should be fixing the game, not playing it to replace this cruiser. But it just felt so important at the time.
Nice, nice. And we got a good question in chat that I would like to ask you. What would make you two come back to the game?
Go ahead, Doc.
Well, again, part of the reason I don't play, besides just the stress and just the hours and time commitment to it, is if I came back, there would be expectations on me, right? Like, Dunk lead a fleet, or Dunk do this, or I'd be, what should we do about this, or an opposing leader reaching out to me, hey, could you talk to so and so about this thing, and I'd be right back where I was. So being the drawback of being space famous is it's hard for me to play the game without that immediately coming up.
Everyone
So
be saying, Papa Dunk, tell us a story.
more than tell us a story, like,
I think you'd like that.
could you have this conversation, this difficult conversation with this person about what they said in comms, or
The HR
hey,
stuff.
hey, could you talk to Brave Leadership about maybe we could dock our ships there? Like, it would always be, that's who I am in the game to people. So that would be for me. So if there was a brand new Eve and everything started fresh from zero and there were no corps and alliances and stuff like that, then, if I was able to maintain my own, just don't go too far, I might do something, because I still would enjoy, like, the building part of the game, that kind of thing. But to come back into Eve as it is would be disruptive, not just to myself, would be disruptive to the other leadership. Like, you can only have one general in charge, and if I came back, I would be looked at as, well, yeah, that's what the current leader thinks, but what does Dunk think? So I think it's a real issue for me in the role I played. I think for people that didn't have such a big leadership role, sliding back in is probably a lot easier.
I mean, you could come back as non-Dunk. Nobody would know who you were, except if you didn't talk on comms, you'd be safe. If the game was drawing you back, but it sounds like the game is the people.
What's the fun of being in comms if I can't use my soundboard? So
I think for me to come back, it's not an issue. It's really not the same issue as in general. I just can't because of career and because of family. It's both things are at a certain point and certain place that they're very demanding, and I just couldn't have this too. And I think Eve is two things. One is it's the social metagame, and it's the actual legit, playing the game. And they are two different things, and both occupy a lot of time. One of the criticisms that reporters and people who do podcasts, some of them, not all, not actually just a few of them, now I think about it, talk shows basically, is that they are too busy doing the talk show that they can't play the game, so they're out of touch and they don't really know what's going on. And that's somewhat true because both things are very time consuming. But, if I wanted to play EVE Online, I would have to play it alone, keep expectations really low, understand that I've been here before, but there's a lot of new stuff too. So maybe just seeing, by the way, EVE is amazing in the way that they've designed it now. I think it's one of the healthiest states it's ever been, but it's from the outside. If you wanted to come in and play with you or just a small group of friends or a small group of strangers, I think there's lots of opportunities to come in and do that right now. And I'm kind of interested in that. But again, it's an issue of trying to fit this game into life. And I'll reveal a secret that I haven't ever told before. But I actually, when I was doing all this stuff, went to therapy, like group therapy at an addiction center. Not a double A or whatever, but like a different competing one. And there's a guy next to me, and he's hooked on cocaine, and he has a bad relationship with his mom. And there's another guy who's even worse. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, I shouldn't be here. So I was like, I'm addicted to a video game. And they're like, oh my God, tell us about that. And I did. They were fascinated. They wanted to play the game after I finished talking about it. They're like, this is amazing. And and so I came back 2 or 3 times and stuff. And every time I talked, it was like, one guy finally looked at me and said, like, it just feels like you have a scheduling problem. And I was like, yeah, I got it. I can't be coming here. This is abusive to them and abusive to me. So I stopped going. But basically, I was looking for an out because Eve has a real attractive power over over people. So it's not something that certain personalities, like maybe like mine, play a little bit and keep everything in a good work-life balance and stuff. It can be a consuming thing. I'll say one last thing. The thing that I saw that was really funny was I think there was a price change when it went to $20, and there was 1,000 comments on like the CNN piece that wrote about it. And the first comment that I saw that was really apropos is because people would say like, "Oh, it's expensive," and some people saying, "Oh, it's worth it." But one guy said, "Well, the real price you pay is you lose your life. That's the
Ouch.
real price." Yeah. And I was like, I think I relate. Yeah.
Ouch. Okay. Actually, Dunk, you spoke about returning if he was not like space famous. Like Matterall touched on it too. But would you return into another gameplay that the one that you knew? Let's say factional warfare, wormholes, low-sec piracy. Would that be like something that you would like? Oh yeah, I'm gonna challenge myself and learn something new about a game that I know like one part really really well.
To be honest, not really. I mean, I liked playing the way I played. I did a bunch of stuff in my. I think I played Eve for 13 years. I did faction warfare when it started. I did a lot of different things. The only thing I didn't do is go into wormholes much because it's really all about secret sex parties and wormholes, and I'm a happily married man. So, I just yeah okay. So, to me, there isn't much I haven't done in Eve, and I think for myself, it's been much better for my life, my health, to not basically have this completely other job in addition to my real world job. I was waking up every morning to problems, coming home every night from work, and there's more problems. Just so much of it became work. And again, unless I was totally anonymous and I just can't imagine coming back just to kind of fly spaceships around. Once you've had a taste of what's the song from Hamilton, "In the Room Where It Happens," if you haven't heard that. So once you've been on the inside of, I'm talking to the three leaders of these major coalitions on a day-to-day basis, and once you're been inside and see how the sausage is made at CCP, once it's hard to play the game at a different level.
Makes perfect sense. And you, Melrose?
Yeah. Well, what's the question?
The question was like, would you come back
mechanics?
to like another kind of gameplay that the one that you used to play back in the days?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's two things. One is I really liked it when people left Eve. Like I felt good for them. Again, because they're getting their life back and they're going, and I felt
And you
like
get
they
their
kind of
stuff, right?
graduated. Yeah, and that too. How do you think I got so rich? Made a lot of friends that made them leave. No, but so I do want to see people graduate and go away. Like nothing's sadder than people come back to high school, right? Like to hang out at the bars that they used to, or whatever. And I don't want to do that. So there's already an aversion to not coming back. But I look at the game and I'm like, God, it looks good. These mechanics, they're really good. Wow, they've really got great developers in there. Some of them were TIS staff, and they just know what they're doing. The game looks like it's in really good shape, and some of the diehards are still here doing it. So there's an attraction to it, I have to admit. It's just I just really have to look at my life holistically. And again, when I was doing even TIS, my son was like 10 and I was a YouTuber, and it was like, wow, that's really cool, Dad. And then he grew older and it's like, wow, not cool, Dad. So I lost a lot of support for even allowing it to happen. But as far as the game goes, yeah, I think this game is in great shape. I would love to come back, and I may sneak in and I may try to work it into something that is manageable. So I don't know what I would do. I miss TIS and I miss EVE Online. And one last thing, like what I've decided to do is play Breath of the Wild, which is, already an old game, but I've finally got a Switch and I'm playing that game because I can turn it on and then turn it off. And it's literally get in, get out. That's it. No commitments. I feel for you, Dunk, because you're, sought after for commitments, and I just couldn't do that.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I can really relate because I used to be a nullsec, and lots of stuff needed to be happening. Now, wormhole, really smaller group, but enjoying myself, and we got times to do like streams and other stuff. So really, like, yeah, but balance is something that I can actually think is happening. Earlier, Dunk, you posted in chat a link on Scruffbox. What is that?
I wrote up after I had been out of the game for, I don't know, 6 months or so. I wrote just a thing that I wrote. I think it was something like "My life as a metaverse warlord," which was kind of about my time in Eve and what I was able to do, and then kind of the reasons I left. So it's just for people that kind of want to read along, navel gazing thing.
Perfect.
But it was some of the things that, a little more detail about the rationale for where I was in the game and why I walked away.
Okay, so those of a few that are listening to us on YouTube, is just on this description below. Nice. So, what do you think would be like improvement that could be done to the game by CCP to help people not winning Eve?
That's a really good one because I think there's two answers to it for me. And one is like, what could you make the game more enticing? And that to me feels like the wrong answer. It would be like, what can you do to incorporate the game into people's lives without them getting so into it? And the reason I joined EVE Online was because I couldn't play video games all the time. So I wanted a game where I could belong to a giant virtual world and just do my little thing at my own pace and not get sucked into, grinding, right? It's an anti-grinding game. So Eve does have some of those things, but then you find that the grind starts to become like a status grind, and then you get sucked into a bunch of other stuff. So I don't know if they could do anything about that. It's just human nature. So yeah, I don't know what they could do to make it less. They already do a lot of things to make the game less, grindy.
Nice. And Dunk?
I think the CCP developers are in a difficult position. I think that Eve attracts a certain kind of player that's looking for kind of very complex, a lot of complexity, achievement, that kind of stuff. So to widen, not a lot of people in gaming want to do that. I've been playing the MMORPGs since like the late 90s, playing Ultima Online and going through Shadowbane and Asheron's Call and a bunch of different things, and World of Warcraft for a while. And the thing about Eve is way out there on the scale of complexity and impact. And a lot of people want the community that you can get in a MMO, and they want the kind of achievement based thing you can get in MMO. But for a lot of people, World of Warcraft's just fine for that. Like they don't feel they need the complexity that Eve brings along with it and the politics that Eve brings along with it. So I think, how do they bring people into the very complex world of Eve? I just think there's probably a limit on how many people out there want to do what Eve offers. So I don't think it's easy. I think that's what you're seeing now is they're trying to reach out with the different, I don't even know the names of the games. There's a shooter game and a couple of variations on what Eve is that they're looking at doing. So I think they're trying to reach out beyond the kind of people that take MMOs to the next level, because there's only so many players that want to do that.
Yeah, maybe they need to like be they need to look into polytheism, right? Like, how can we live among other games? So people, and there is this culture a little bit with Eve is how do people play Eve online and play other games? And that way, maybe that releases some of the pressure to like be completely dedicated to Eve, and that might suit people better. So Eve is a touchstone, and people do play this game this way. They kind of come and go, and that needs to be okay. So maybe you find a way to make it okay to come and go, and people just always stay attached to Eve. It's kind of like, the bowling club or whatever. And in the summer, there's a hot season, and you play a little more than usual. But that to me would seem to be a lot healthier, I think. But Eve is like I called it when I saw it. I was like, oh my God, this is the professionals game. Like this is where the professionals go. Like the people who play this game are professionals. It's
Professionals. Wow.
that's
You,
how I
you
saw
see,
it.
like, I would not call myself that concerning the game.
Oh yeah,
I
this
got
game compared
interviewed.
to other games.
I got interviewed at one of the last fan fests I went to by journalists who wanted CCP arranged for business people, serious business people who play Eve, to be interviewed about like how does your business skills apply to it, and we all said, oh, very very clearly, it's very obvious how so much.
Yep, that is
I,
true.
I found it's detrimental to my, now I work for a big corporation and manage dozens people, and I find that my language is completely wrong for management.
A line to the
You
door,
know.
a line to the door.
Yeah, I have caught myself saying X up if you can check, and it's like, whoa, got to leave all that behind. But I think you're speaking in terms of not taking anything away from what you're saying, Dunk, is logistics and planning and career pathing and things that you have to do for people, at least as a manager. And there's some aspects of that. Running a corporation in Eve is not the same as running a corporation or a team in real life. There are similarities, but it's a different language set, and this is way less formal than at least the corporation I work for.
I don't know, man. I mean, I find so many parallels. So many of the things I developed both in the corporate world applying into Eve, and techniques I developed in Eve applying in the corporate world, right? A lot of negotiation on a daily basis goes on in Eve, and corporate life is a lot about negotiation. So definitely negotiating with enemies in the game taught me things about negotiating with other executives in business.
Yeah, and if I may add on that, because I got like similar, let's say, stories that like in real life, your employees get paid, and that's a big difference to like make
Not that big.
Well, like
It's not that big a difference.
like I don't know how to translate that in proper English, but to get people to do something, it's either with fun, with money, or with dedication, or let's say so those are like the three basics, and money is not one that you got really in Eve. So it's either needs to be fun or purposeful, in a very good way.
But in real life, that the money is like true. They have to do it, but then they don't like you for it. Like there's as a manager, you have to lay track in front of people. They have to see a path forward. They have to see advancement. You're responsible for all that. Yeah, you can in real work, I guess, because it's a job, you can force people to do stuff they don't want to do. But then they can also leave, and then the stakes are higher too.
Yeah, the two are like if you're only based on money, that's not good. But when you're already really good in the two first because you're playing Eve, and then you add money, things are, let's say, good. Well, personal point of view here. Nice. Dunk, you shared another link with Rock Paper Shotgun. That's the interview, I guess.
That's the interview that I mentioned earlier.
Great. So you'll get that into the description below for the YouTube watcher too. Awesome. Well, it's pretty much wrapped it up on the hours. So thank you a lot, both Dunk Dinkle and Matterall, to actually accept this invitation to come back on TIS to actually have like a great talk about this winning Eve, and let's so that people can have like a better understanding on like how in the real sandbox game like you can get wrapped into like too much freedom. So on this would you actually have like a shout out to do to make Dunk or in Montreal, or like last out?
Shout out to Brave, and I hope you're doing well. Good luck to Jinx in the mantle he's now wearing.
Yeah, Jinx, that is like he's supposed to send me like some merch for the Eve Montreal at the end of the month. So yeah, we should have like some Brave merch like at this event. So thanks, Matterall.
Yeah, shout out to you, Ben, and to Rain and all the crew at TIS. Ken, who keeps delivering great content, and Carneros and Lady Scarlet, who hold the place down, basically. It's really nice to see it go. I came back to just be in the background and have the keys and unlock things, but you know, I was hoping to be able to do a little bit more. It just didn't work out, but you guys, you know, literally don't need me. This is running really well. I like all the commercials. I like the whole vibe of it. So great job. So that's my shout out. You guys are doing a great job.
Well, thank you very much. And on this, Catchers, we're gonna see you, well, maybe later this week if Kenneth has some stuff, or next week. And on this, have a great time.
We are wanderers, neutral and in service to all of New Eden. We rescue the lost and light the way through Thera. We sail forbidden seas. Come explore with us. Signal Cartel. Can't stop the signal.
Hey there, Canucks and friends! On the 30th of March, the 4th edition of EVE Montreal will be happening! This year, we even got a VIP option. Like the previous year, we'll be having our fun at the Sugar Shack. Not only will you be able to exchange with other capsuleers from all over New Eden, but you will also get some awesome swag. And once your belly is full and that you've got your maple syrup snow taffy, we'll be entering the giveaways from CCP. And they got us some awesome merch. From Rick's Jarvik's art print to Lloyd George art prints, The Art of New Eden hardcover books, USB Rifter and more. You do not want to miss that. You want more? Get the VIP ticket to unlock the laser tag games later in the afternoon. We'll finish up the evening at a nearby pub eating and drinking again. Check out the description for more information. And see you at the Sugar Shack.